everyone, my name is Athena Loveland, and I wanted to put together a video today to show you how to make this cute little bag right here, based off of a very famous designer tote bag, and I like to call this the Not the Tote Bag Tote Bag. There's not going to be an official pattern. I'm not a pattern writer, so going through and writing everything down and writing descriptions on how to do this is kind of my way of putting it out there. So I'm going to walk through all the descriptions, the sewing. I do cut a few corners because I figured most people know how to do a pocket and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to make it super detailed, but I am going to show you the assembly of the bag so that way you understand the process. This particular bag is 12 inches wide by 9 inches high. It's about 3¼ inches deep, thereabouts. I've included a couple of pockets on the inside, you can see. Pockets always interchangeable. I'm not going to include that in the pattern. I'm going to give you the basic measurements of the actual tote. The interior you can do whatever you want with. On this particular one, I included purse feet because who doesn't like a bag that tap dances, right? Tap, tap, tap. So not required. That's the only hardware I have on here. You don't need it. If you want to, you could put them there. I don't show you how to do it. I have them already pre-done. But if you want to put them there, you can. If you don't, it's not required. It's part of the pattern. So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to show you the pieces that I have first. Again, the description box is going to have the measurements. I make this bag in 3 sizes, a small, a medium, and large. We're making the small one today. So you can see I've got my base, which is vinyl. Very minimal interfacing because in order for this to work, the first one I made had a lot of interfacing because I like a nice firm base on my bag. The problem with that is when we're doing the assembly, if the base is too firm, it becomes really hard to get around the corners when we do the final assembly and the binding around the edges. So I don't put any sort of interfacing on the vinyl. If you find you have a really thin piece of vinyl, an option for you at the end is to create a false bottom, and then you can put that in the bag for stability. But I just put a little interfacing where the purse feet are. If you don't have any purse feet, you wouldn't have to do that. I guess you could try putting maybe a thin piece of interfacing that doesn't cover the entirety of the bag just to give it a little support in the middle. But again, the more interfacing and the thicker the vinyl that you use here, it gets a little stiff and a little tough when you try to not turn the bag, it's not a turned bag, but when you try to sew around the corners. So that is my pre-prepped with purse feet base for the bag. I'm gonna put that aside. I have 2 side gusset pieces, 1, 2, and I've interfaced these with SF101. You can use something similar. And decovil light, and I kept the decovil a 1/2 inch from each edge so it doesn't get into the seam allowance. You will have a lot of fabric all coming together when you assemble this together, so you want to keep that decovil out, but the SF101 goes all the way to the edge. I'm using a canvas exterior for this. You can probably use cotton. You might want to give it maybe 2 layers of the SF101 and the decovil just to give it a little more durability because it does end up being kind of a rigid bag at the end. But canvas is great. I've not done this with vinyls. You can see I have a domestic machine, no industrial here. So I have to kind of limit what I can put through here. And the very first bag that I did was a vinyl bag pre this pattern, and I struggled getting that through with the vinyl. That was a different iteration. I may try it again now that I have this new way of doing it, but for now, canvas is the way to go. So canvas, the 2 side panels, and then you have your canvas front and back panels. So we're gonna work on the front right now. I do have a piece of waterproof canvas for the lining and a couple of pockets. We'll work on those in a little bit. And then I also have, out of the frame, some webbing that I'm gonna use for my straps. I cut these about 36 inches or so. So we're going to put those on first, and then I'm also going to put my bag tag. So let's get started with that. Editing will be fun. All right, so I think I'm gonna make that, I guess that's kind of the top. So that's gonna be the top. For this small bag, I do about 2.5 inches in from the edge to put the strap down. So I'm gonna use some double-sided tape here. And this kind of is, I have to make sure I pay attention to which way this goes. So I'll put some double-sided tape down just to hold this in place. Right down the middle. All right, so 2.5 inches from the edge. I don't know if you can see it if I'm in the frame, but 2.5 inches from the edge. I'm gonna flip this over and I'm gonna leave about a 1/2 inch or so hanging out the bottom, just so that way when I sew the base to the liner, I catch that end of the strap. So about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Make sure that's straight. And I'm gonna tack that down right there. So that's side number one. Come around this way. I'm gonna make sure that my strap is going the right way, that it's not getting twisted. And I'm gonna do the same on the other side. I'm gonna put my ruler here. I'm gonna measure in 2.5 inches from the edge. I'm gonna add my double-sided tape. Just like so. And then it's gonna be a pain in the butt, not wanna peel. There we go. Oops. There we go. All right, 2.5 inches. Flip that over, and again, I'm gonna leave about a 1/2 inch at the bottom so I can catch it in the seam allowance. I'm gonna tack that down. So that's one side. And now I'm gonna do the other side. Same thing. That's the top. Ooh, my stickers are here. I just saw UPS go by. I've been waiting all day for them. I had some stickers made. I am doing my first ever craft fair with a local friend who is also a bag maker. And we're sharing a table, and she invited me to join her, and I've never done anything before. Bag making for me became a hobby. I learned to sew shortly around COVID. Right when it started and people were really struggling to find PPE. I had just gotten a Cricut for Christmas, and I was like, oh, well, the Cricut can cut out the pieces for masks, and my mother-in-law sews, so, you know, if I cut them and she sews them, we can make a whole bunch of masks. And so I created a spreadsheet, and I had people sign up for people who needed masks, and I had a couple friends help me organize, and it turned into a much larger project than I had anticipated because everybody needed masks. So I kind of said, well, maybe I can help my mother-in-law because the poor woman was doing all this sewing on her own. And so she gave me some quick basics, and off I went. And once the kind of pressure died down, when there wasn't as much demand for those masks anymore, now I had this skill, and I said, well, what can I do with this? It's still COVID, we can't go anywhere. I decided to learn to make bags. So I started with like a simple zipper pouch and a basic tote bag, and it just went from there. And I watched so many people on YouTube, and it was just self-taught, and it's been such a blast. And so the nice thing about this particular project is it's kind of a culmination of all the things I've learned from all the wonderful pattern makers and all the wonderful bag makers out there, to kind of put this together. So kudos to all of you. If this is the kind of thing you do, if you're putting out content out there, I've probably watched it, and you've helped me learn how to do this. So thank you. Anyways, let me grab my bag tag because I left it over the other table. I'm not organized. I don't normally do this. This is all very new. I'm not going to be making a ton of videos. I'm going to leave that to the experts, as you can tell. Ah! I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to try this again. I am a consumer of content. I am not a creator of content. So we are doing good here. All right, my double-sided sticky tape. I'm gonna put my bag tag. If you're curious about my bag tags, I make these each and every one by myself. Again, I don't normally create a ton of bags for shows. This is the first time I'm doing a show like this. So I don't have the need to have a bunch of tags mass produced. So I just use my Cricut for this. I cut out like 1 1/4 inch faux vinyl faux leather squares. And then I just use the iridescent HTV with my logo, which is just a heart the way I draw it. I don't pick up the pen, so that's why it's got that line through the middle. And my last name's Loveland, so it works out well. So I'm gonna put this on here. Get my ruler, kind of center it. So it's like 2, let's put it around there. That looks good. We'll make this the front. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and assemble, we're gonna sew the straps down. When I sew the straps, I will sew down one side. I start maybe about 3/4 of an inch to an inch down from the top. I don't sew all the way to the top because you still need to have room for your seam allowance up here and then to top stitch. So I sew about an inch down, maybe 3/4, somewhere in there. And then I sew down across the bottom, up the other side, and I stop again about an inch down from the top. And I'll do the same on both sides. So I'm gonna sew. I'll probably speed this up when I do it on the computer, but set my settings. All right. Now, I guess I'll talk through this since I may or may not speed this up, but I'll give you some more info about me and my sewing. I am not a perfectionist. I like things to be good, but I also try not to stress too much about whether or not things are perfect, because you know what? Nobody's perfect. So if things don't go quite right, it's all right. As long as it's fixable or usable, I will make it work. So, you know, I also really enjoy cooking and not baking for the same reason, because you can kind of just, it's good enough kind of mentality when I cook. I don't usually measure. I just kind of go with it. I think sometimes when I cook and I come up with recipes, I don't write anything down and I never make the same thing exactly the same twice because I don't use recipes. So I guess that's kind of the same here. They're not always exact. I'm trying to keep this as exact as possible because I got to make a bunch of them. But, you know, if it's not, one more stitch. If it's not quite perfect, you know, I've taken apart a few bags. And if you've never taken apart like a commercially made bag, you'll notice they're not perfect either. They're definitely not perfect. There's a lot of messy stuff happening on the inside that you don't see. There's some crooked seams. There's some, you know, funky stitches, whatever. So don't be hard on yourself when you do this. It is very, 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 very important that you are kind to yourself, because just the process of creating is such a huge deal. And all you folks out there who are going to end up watching this, or nobody who ends up watching this, I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but whoever ends up watching this, just know to be kind to yourself, that mistakes are going to happen. Take a breath. Don't beat yourself up. You'll find a solution to fix it. Otherwise, you know what? Make it a happy accident. Let me trim all my threads. I'm sure I'm off camera there, but whatever. Doop, doop, doop. I always tell my friends when I sew with them to be kind to themselves, because it's very easy to want to be perfect, to want everything to be perfect, and when it's not, to get really frustrated. So it's much easier to just know it's not going to be perfect and do the best you can. So now I'm going to sew my bag tag on. And what I do for this, when I sew around, I leave long tails. I don't know if you can see them hanging out back there. I leave long tails so I can pull them through and tie them off in the back, rather than going forward and backwards, because it just looks nicer, neater than having the double thread thickness in one spot. And then I just go around. And I've done this a few times now, so I remember how many stitches it takes, which is nice, so long as I start it in the same spot every time. I did good. Beauteous. All right. Boop, boop. And then what I do is in the back, I pull my little threads through. I don't know if you can see it there. Use my tiny screwdriver. Uh-oh. There we go. I think I may have pulled out a stitch. Whoopsie daisy. As I was talking about being kind to yourself, and I do something silly like that. Good thing the thread is black. You're not going to be able to tell. So if I pull out a stitch, you can't notice it from the front. And you know what? Most people are not looking that closely, nor do they know the process of doing this. So they're not going to know to look for some of these things. So don't beat yourself up. I'll show you on the front what I mean. Let me trim those. There's my snippy snips. Yeah, I pulled out a stitch, so it just comes just shy. But again, you can't really tell. No one's going to know. I don't even know if that's on the camera. Hopefully all this is on camera. But anyways, moving on. So I've got this one sewn on. I'm going to sew the straps on this side on. Same thing. Ooh, there we go. About an inch down, about 1/8 an inch from the edge. So you don't want it to be too far in, because then you'll get like, it'll curl up on you, but you don't want to be too close. It's about 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 to 1/4, somewhere between there. And I do go forward and back for one stitch at the top here. The nice thing about this cotton webbing is that the stitches get hidden really well in there, so I try to go as straight as I can, but again, I'm human, and my machine doesn't always go straight, nor do I, so make it work. Across the bottom, up the other side. Ooh. We'll do this other side. I'm literally just using the length of my foot to determine how far down to start. So I'm like putting the edge of my foot on the top of the bag. It's about 1 inch. Again, not perfect. And you know, as some of you watch this and try this, you may find ways that make this better. You may find a better process than what I've come up with. And if you do, please tell me, because I'm always looking to improve things, make things easier. When I was a kid, I watched a lot of DuckTales, and Scrooge McDuck would always say, work smarter, not harder. It is the kind of motto for my life. I do like to be smart about things. I don't want to have to work hard. So if you come up with a way to make any of this process easier, please, please, please share it. Please tag me. I will include my social, well, my socials, it's just my name and my Instagram if you want to let me know. And in case I haven't mentioned this, because I have no idea what I've talked about since I've started doing this, I'm not charging for this pattern. There's no written pattern. All the information is in this video. You are free to make as many as you want. You are free to share it with as many people as you like. Ooh. This is something that I came up with. I don't have the time, the effort, or the willingness to sit down and actually write a pattern for this. So if you're a visual person and this helps you figure it out, great. If you like written patterns, I'm sorry, I'm not writing one. I apologize. Hopefully you get this and you can figure it out. So we've got our front and back panels sewn with the strap sewn on. Now we're going to take our base and we're going to attach that. So we're going to end up with one long piece. So I'm just going to use my clips, which I'm hiding over here. My throat is feeling a little hoarse. That figures. When I decide to film this, my throat decides to feel a little meh. Hopefully this is not a thing. Anyway, so I'm gonna clip this down, line it all up, and I'm gonna sew this at about, my seam allowances change on this so much. Again, like cooking, I'm not always exact with everything. In fact, oftentimes I'm not exact. Even on bags that tell me to be exact about seam allowances, I don't know that I'm always right. So don't stress if you're not exact on this. Be close enough, it should work out okay. So I'm going to do about 3/8, quarter to 3/8, let's say 3/8. 3/8 inch seam allowance on this. I just kind of put it on a spot on my presser foot and use that as a measurement. I think it's about 3/8. Forward and back at the start. I'm going to go all the way across. Just sew all this down. There is a bug that has made its way into my sewing space here, and I hear it buzzing around. And I hope it doesn't buzz over here, because I am not in the mood to deal with that. I don't mind that he's here as long as he stays away from me. So, we've sewn that down. We're going to flip that open, and then we're going to top stitch. And when I top stitch, I want to push the seam down to the base. That way. I don't want to flip it up towards the bag because the straps want to go this way. So I'm going to push the entirety of the seam down towards the base and then top stitch through all of that on the base. And that's at 1/8 of an inch. Just to make sure I catch. Well, let me switch my stitch length here. I'd tell you what my stitch length is, but I know that everybody's machines are different. So whatever you use for top stitching, switch to that and top stitch across. All right, make sure that seam is going in the right direction. Perfect. So there we go. We've got that top stitch down. We are going to attach it to the other side now. Same thing. Gonna clip it together. And then sew it about a 3/8 seam allowance. What you really want to do is make sure that you're consistent here. if you do a 1/4 on one side, you got to do a 1/4 on the other. If you do a 1/2 inch on one side, you got to do a 1/2 inch on the other. Because if you start to get a little wishy-washy on this, the bottom of your bag is not going to be centered. So whatever you decide, 1/4, 3/4, or not 3/4, that'd be huge. 1/4, 3/8, 1/2 inch, somewhere in there. Just make sure you're consistent on both sides. So that should be pretty. Oops. I'm not used to talking myself through these, so forgive me if I sound a little flustered at times. I'm not, and I've said this already, not a content creator. This is not my safe space. Well, I won't say safe space, but it's not my comfort zone, I guess you could say. I normally like consuming this stuff. I don't like necessarily doing it. So if you end up subscribing to my channel because of this, don't expect a ton of stuff coming your way. I apologize. Again, I make stuff when I feel like it's needed. A while back I had done a quick video because somebody asked for how I put together dog collars, because there really wasn't one that was really clear and concise about how it went together. And apparently it's helped quite a few people. So on occasion I may pop up, but this is not going to be a normal everyday kind of thing where there's going to be a lot of stuff coming your way. So, all right, let me fold that seam down. Just kind of finger press it. And then I'm going to top stitch. Same as before, 1/8 of an inch. All the way across, make sure that seam is pointed down towards the base. For me, well, maybe this is most people. I know some people like cutting. I do not like cutting bags. I wish they could just automatically just appear pre-cut, ready to go, and I could just sew. Because this part is the fun part for me personally, right? I know some people might enjoy the process of cutting bags. I don't. And since I've been working on this craft fair that I'm going to be doing, I've had to do a lot of cutting. And a lot of cutting. And so it's nice to kind of be at the end of that process now, getting to the point where I can start sewing these together, because that's the part that I enjoy. So we have here one big piece. I don't know if you can see it all in this video. It's all there, one big piece. I'll just kind of show it to you, little tote bag shape. So now I'm going to put this aside. We are going to do our side panels and get those sewn together. So let me get those together for you. Where are my lining pieces? Oh, they're here. There we go. So I have 2 exteriors and 2 linings. We are going to figure out where the top is, where you want the top to be. I think they go this way. So we'll make that the top up here. And we're going to put them right sides together. I didn't cut these quite straight because I hate cutting. Never can seem to get it quite right ever. I know some people are, when they do their cutting and their sewing, their stuff is like to the millimeter, matches up perfectly. And then mine, I don't know if you can see it, like it just doesn't. Do the best you can. What's most important here though is that it doesn't start to do this when you put it down, because you're eventually going to baste around the edge. So make sure that when you clip this together that it's lined up all the way down, So when you sew across here and then flip it and later baste it, that these pieces are together, because you're going to baste this into one panel, kind of like you would on any bag that you bind, where you kind of sew the lining piece and the exterior piece together. Now we're doing this one, we're going to sew the top, flip it over, and then baste the side. So the top doesn't get bound. The top has a nice seam and a top stitch, and then the sides get bound on the bag. So let me do the other one so they're ready to go. Clippity clip. And then this, I'm going to do at about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. There we go. Might as well do these together. All right, separate these guys, trim some threads. See, I made that one a little crooked, so we're gonna have to finagle that. Problem solving as we go, it's okay. So we flip that over. We're gonna put the wrong sides together. We're gonna make sure this seam is folded nicely at the top. Open it up. You're gonna feel that decovil light in there, kind of wanting to dictate where things are gonna go, and that's why it's there. So use it. I'm gonna flip it, and then I'm just gonna give it a couple of clips to hold it in place. So when I sew it, it doesn't shift on me. All right. And then we'll do this one. We're gonna flip. I'm gonna press that seam open. Right, wrong sides together. Make sure everything is straight as you can here. Finger press, clip that in place so it doesn't shift on me. And just a couple around the side. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to top stitch at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Top stitch a 1/2 inch. I use the width of my foot. That's like my measurement. And then you're going to baste around the rest because you want it to be one solid piece so things don't shift later on when we're doing other things. So I'm going to put this foot down and we're going to go. So top stitch across the top. This is probably slightly less than 1/2 inch. Again, remember, I don't measure exactly. So maybe slightly less than 1/2 inch. Again, you do you. As long as you're consistent here, you'll be fine. 1/8 inch isn't gonna make a big deal on it. And then we're just gonna go around the whole thing. Let's do basting length, as we're gonna be here all day. Come around the bottom. Come up the other side. Make sure you're catching both layers. If you're slightly off on your cuts, just make sure you feel, so that way things don't shift on you later. So there's one. Trim the threads. Okay. And we'll do the other one. Again, top stitch across the top. And then we are going to baste around the rest of it, just to hold it in place. If you don't do this part, when you start putting it together, there's a possibility that pieces will shift and that they don't get caught in the final construction when you sew it together, and then you might have gaps and holes. So you definitely want to make sure you do this part, baste things together. It will make your life a boatload easier. Trim, trim threads. Okay. If you're wondering what kind of sewing machine I'm on, because I know that might be a question and people are always talking about sewing machines, I have the Brother Strong and Tough. The model number is the ST150HDH. I do this as a hobby, so having an industrial, while it would be incredible to have one, it's just not something I can justify spending the money on right now. Maybe at this craft fair, if I sell all these bags, I can talk my husband into thinking that that would be a really wise purchase for me. But this machine does just about everything I ask it to. I do have to be careful on some really, really thick seams, but I mean, that's kind of like you have to do that with any machine. So I know its limitations. I do my best to make sure I stay within its limitations. And when I'm kind of pushing those boundaries, I go really slow. I hand crank. I use my little hump jumper, and I make it work. So in case you were wondering, it's a whole whopping $2.99 on Amazon if you look on the right day. It definitely is something that if you're not looking to or not able to spend the money on an industrial, but you want to kind of be able to do this kind of stuff, I would suggest this machine. So I've got my side panels done. I'm going to put those aside. I wasn't going to do this part on the screen, but then I realized, again, because I'm not a pattern maker and I didn't want to do a ton of math, I did have a bag where one day I had cut this lining piece out and it didn't quite fit with the exterior and I had to trim it. But it looks like this is really close. So that might be good. Yeah. I'm just gonna shave off a 1/4 inch, which means I'll probably put a cut here, but let me shave off a 1/4 inch. Cool. So that looks good. So now I'm going to attach my pockets. Again, pockets, in my personal opinion, you can put whatever pocket wherever you want, generally. So on this particular bag, for consistency, since I'm making a bunch of them, I do like one wider slip pocket, and then I do a smaller slip pocket for the other side. But you can do what you want. You want to put a zippered pocket in here? Go for it. You want to put one that goes all the way across. The one thing I would suggest if you do that, I don't know if you can see, I have this vinyl kind of accent piece on the pocket. Just adds a little bit more pizzazz. It is not necessary. If you're going to do a pocket that goes from seam to seam, consider not doing this, because this is going to add bulk to your seam, and it may not seem like much, but when everything comes together, it might cause some issues, especially if you don't have an industrial. So just keep that in mind when you decide what pockets you want to do. I have done another bag, a medium size, where I did the pocket all the way across, and then I divided the pocket in half with like a pen pocket in the middle, and I didn't include this accent piece on the top. It's just canvas, and that sewed up fine. So just keep that in mind when you're sewing. So let me position these. I forgot, this is the back side. So I just put a little double-sided tape, this 1/8 inch double-sided tape. I get this from Mormino, who gets it from Weft and Warp Co. I love it. It is great tape. This is the 1/8 inch. I have the 1/8 inch, and then I have the 1/2 inch tape as well. It's fantastic. It sticks to just about everything. Sometimes too well, like you saw before with my label when I was trying to get it off my fingers and got stuck. So I just put a little bit just to kind of hold it in place. That's a little long. And then what I do is I take my ruler. I got my 12-inch ruler here. I go about 2.5 inches down. So I gotta remember that when I sew this together, I'm gonna sew a 1/2 inch at the top is gonna be my seam allowance to attach it to the front panel. And then the bag in total, I think I made this like 6 inches, right? The bag in total is about 9 inches tall. So I can't bring this down too far. So on this particular bag, on the small one, I go 2.5. So I just kind of line my ruler up here and I center it slightly smaller than 12 inches wide. That's okay. So that way I know where my center is. And then I take my little double-sided, I don't know if you can see this, let me turn it a little. Watch me struggle with the double-sided tape backing. Yay! This is riveting television. Ugh, that bug buzzing around. I don't know if you can hear it. It's bug season. All right, double-sided tape. Check my ruler again, 2.5 inches. Gonna line it up. And then what I do is I just take this, try to find the middle. I'm about 1/2 inch, 4.5 inches on each side of center. And then I just kind of, if I don't get my hand stuck in the tape, let it drop. And then tack it into place. So that's one side. I'll do the same on the other. Again, I'm gonna set my ruler up. Well, first I'm gonna put my double-sided tape. That's my front. I think I like that better. Just enough. I put it right on the edge, just enough to hold it. If you want to use pins, I don't like using pins. If you want to use pins, that's fine too. You do what you need to do here. I just don't like using pins. I end up stabbing myself more than the fabric, so clips and tape are my friend. All right, so we're going to take the backing off, hopefully. Come on. All right. So I don't know if the other one was in the screen, so I slid this down a little bit more so you can see better. And then again, I kind of center it. It's like 2 3/4 inches on each side, and I just kind of boop. That's about centered. There we go. Science, it's scientific, right? Like this whole process. Lots of exact whatever. So I'm going to attach these down and around. Off we go. sure I don't catch the other side in here. Roll out the seam a little bit better. And then we'll come up the other side. Make sure that little vinyl doesn't get smushed and twisted. There's one pocket. I'm gonna trim my threads. That long one out of the way from the back. Do the other side. Same thing. Make sure you reinforce at the top there. There's a lot of stress. Opening and closing a pocket, pulling on it, putting things in it, holding it in place. Give yourself a couple extra stitches there. Come across the bottom. Come up the other side. Make sure my vinyl doesn't get bent out of shape by my foot. There we go, pockets are on. Trim the threads. Boop, boop. Trim this long one back here. I don't think it's too bad. And there we go. So, the fun part now. We are going to take our exterior and on our interior, and we are going to clip them together, right sides together. I like to put the small pocket up against the front of the bag. Personal preference, just telling you what I'm doing. And the big pocket in the back, however you want to do it, that's your business. So I'm going to put these together and I'm just going to clip them. I'm going to make sure my straps go inside. They're not sticking out through the top, because that's not going to work if you do that. So we're just going to clip across the short ends here. We're not going down the sides yet. That'll come in a little bit. So we're just the short sides. We're going to clip those together. And then, because we don't put binding across the top of this bag. So this bag is sewn and turned right side out. So we have a nice seam there. And then we bind the side with the gussets. So we got that clipped together. Go down to the other side. Again, make sure you tuck those straps in and away so they don't end up where they're not supposed to be. And your straps are going to feel like they're pretty close to the top, so make sure you pull them away from where you're going to be sewing. You don't want to accidentally catch the straps when you're sewing these together, because that'll also be a mess. So just make sure you pull them down and away. If you've not sewn them up too high, you shouldn't have any problem with it. All right. So you're going to sew across these at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, or in my case, the width, maybe just shy 1/2 inch again. I just use the width of my presser foot as my quote-unquote 1/2 inch measurement. It's not accurate. but it's consistent. So we're gonna sew across. It's gonna wanna kind of pull, especially if your webbing is really thick when you get here, and not stay even at the top. So just make sure you reach inside and pull that webbing back so it doesn't torque where you're sewing, if that makes sense. It'll make sense when you start doing it, I promise. You'll see it's gonna wanna pull and not make everything straight. So don't let it do that. This is gonna run into my camera. I apologize, folks. I am not used to having a camera there. Let me fold that up so it's out of the way. All right, so we sew across one side, snip, snip. We're gonna sew across the other side. Again, make sure those straps are pulled down and away. Don't let it torque your exterior panel. Strap out of the way. Again, running into the camera. Let me fold that up so the camera doesn't start getting pushed around. I hope my face is not in this scene because I stick my tongue out a lot. If you're a tongue sticker outer, tell me. I know I'm not the only one. Snip, snip. So we've got the end sewed up. We don't sew up the sides. We're going to turn the bag so it's right side out. I'm going to do that off camera because there's no room on the camera for you to see that, but that's pretty obvious what you need to do here, right? I'm just going to flip it. Come on. I try to be gentle so I don't wrinkle it. The decovil light can get wrinkly, so I'm trying not to be too aggressive. Waterproof canvas can get wrinkly. I'm trying not to allow that to happen. So we're right side out. We're going to press these seams nice on the edges here, and then we're going to clip it all together on the sides, and we are going to baste it together. Because again, like the sides, when you're doing something like this where it's bound, if the pieces are not all attached, they tend to shift when you've got multiple layers. And then you have gaps, and we don't want gaps, especially because the way we sew this together, we can't, at least on my machine, maybe you can on yours, we can't get all the way around the corners. We get as close as we possibly can to the corners, and it's good enough. But if you leave gaps, it's not going to be good enough because things will shift, and then you're going to find you're going to have little spaces. So I've clipped here. This is going to end up, when we top stitch, we are going to top stitch across. We are going to attach the straps here. We're going to sew across all of it. So we're not going to fold this out of the way. We're going to do our 1/2 inch top stitching, and we're going to go right across these straps. So if you want to clip them, you can do that. I don't clip them. I just have to make sure that they stay there when I sew across. So I'm going to finish rolling the seams here so they're nice, crisp. We'll put a couple clips just to hold it in place. And your lining and your exterior should be nice and flat against each other. If that's not the case here, don't keep going because it's going to make things really wonky. So make sure everything is lined up right. And now I'm going to top stitch across. Again, straps are going to get sewn across. I have to remind myself, do that. Sew across top. I'm going to baste down the sides so they stay together. And then I'm going to top stitch the other side and then baste down the other side. So it's one big loop here. Let me get this in there and we're off. So top stitch. Again, we are top stitching across the straps. Hold them in place so they don't get pushed by your presser foot out of the way, because that would be annoying. Just hold them as you go through. Again, I'm going to run into the base, the tripod, so let me move that out of the way. All right, we're going to baste down the side. This is feeling like something is not quite sitting right here. And I'm worried when I baste, I'm going to get a bunch, so let me fix this here. I'm going to leave that one. All right. Press her foot down. And off we go. Just kind of guide everything gently. This side. Sorry for bumping the camera. I'm not used to this. Whoa. Hang on there, folks. All right. That looks like it should have you in the right-ish spot. All right, top stitching across. Remember, we're going across the straps. Half-inch seam allowance. Baste down the other side. There we go. All set. So now we've got this basted together. We've got our straps, we've got our logo, we've got our lining in here. Now comes the fun part. Finding your centers. If you haven't done that, I never do it early because I'm dumb. You want to find your centers. So, just going to go ahead and snip those. These threads. Some long threads in here. I'm going to snip those as well because there's going to be a lot of stuff later. If you don't snip your threads as you go, it's going to be a pain. You have to give your bag a haircut. So snip, snip, snip now. Get them out. Okay. And the fun thing about canvas is it's always unraveling. So so now what we're going to do, we found our centers on these. We need to find our centers on our panels here at the bottom. Just going to fold those in half. Oops. Give it a little snip. Give this one a little snip. And we are going to do right sides together. We're going to do lining sides together, and we're going to clip at the base. We're going to clip our bottom. Put a couple clips here. And we're going to do the same on the other side. And when I do this, you know, I have my center marks, but I also want to make sure that these kind of line up with each other, if that makes sense, because if they're not lined up, then your bag's going to be kind of wonky, so. Make sure you're putting lining sides together. So there we go. That looks good. That looks good. These are kind of straight on each other. Let me move that a little. There we go. And what I'm going to do now is I want to sew. You can mark if you want, right? Eyeball it. But if you want, I'll grab a pen. You just want to make sure you leave about 3/8 of an inch from either side. You're going to make a mark about 3/8 of an inch in. And the same on the other side. You're going to start and stop on that line. And your seam allowance is going to be about a quarter of an inch here. So you're going to sew from one mark to the other. You're going to sew these together and that's it. And you're going to do the same on the other side. And again, about a quarter of an inch seam allowance, quarter to 3/8. You don't want a very big seam allowance, but you don't want it to be too small either. So I know, so accurate, right? Make sure you reinforce it forward and back. And just sew straight across. Oops, I didn't quite get to that mark. That's right. Let me do a little extra. I lost track of my mark. All right, there we go. Now I made it to the mark. So I do the other side. Same kind of thing. I didn't mark this side. I'm gonna mark this side real quick. And of course, this side's black. That's all right. I know about where I need to go. Okay, so we have attached the bottoms of the lining pieces, the gusset pieces, to the side. Now we're going to pick one side and we are going to fold up. Let me pull this up a little bit so you can watch me do this. Okay, so we're going to fold up the gusset and we're going to clip here to hold it together, and we're just going to clip all the way around. Make sure everything kind of lines up nice. Where you didn't quite stitch, there'll be the little corner piece. You can just pop that out to make it kind of fit in there. If you want to put a snip in there to make it sit better, you can. It's up to you. I've done both the snip and without the snip. It just depends on how accurate I've been while I've been making this bag. As I've mentioned multiple times, I'm not always accurate. I'm of the close enough mentality, which sometimes does bite me in the butt. I'm not gonna lie. So if you can be accurate, but whatever. I'm not a professional, I'm an amateur. So you're gonna clip like that around the edges, and then you're gonna sew gusset side up. And what's gonna happen here, because this corner gets very tight, if you have a cylinder machine or if you have any other kind of machine, you can make it around that corner. I mean, it's not necessary because you've sewn the bottom, so it doesn't matter. It might matter on the binding. I'm gonna basically sew from the top, and I'm gonna try and get as close to that ending point on the stitches that we did as I possibly can. If you don't get there, close is good, but you want to be like less than 1/4 of an inch. You too far away, that's going to leave a hole. But if you're about 1/4 inch or less, more like 1/8 of an inch, you should be fine. So get as close as you can, and then you're going to go down the other side. So let me try and finagle my camera here so you can see better. I might do it from, whoop, I'll be editing this out. This is gonna be hard. That's good. All right. We'll try this angle. I want you to be able to see from that side. I think that's going to be the best angle. I may try as I do this, do different angles so that way you can see in case this one doesn't work out. But I think you'll be able to see what I'm talking about there. So I'm going to push this aside, and you'll see why when we get to this, why the base being softer is going to help. So you're going to sew down, get that clip out of the way, at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're catching everything. And you're just kind of pushing your gusset flat and away. And as you get to the bottom here, you're going to want to kind of crease the base and fold it. So you kind of want to make this as square as possible. I don't know if you can see it. Let me lift it just in case. So you see I'm kind of pushing it. You want it to be kind of as square as possible here as you're sewing down to that point. So this bag does require a little bit of muscle. My table has shifted. Again, you want to try and get close to those stitches as possible. Reinforcing really good when you get down there. And then we'll go the other side. We're going to start from the base down there. And again, you see, you got to kind of, yeah, you kind of have to smush it. So if you had a really stiff base in there, interfacing, you would be struggling. So if you really like the idea of a stiff base after the fact, you can always, like I said, you could put in a false bottom. I have not had to yet for one of these. These small ones especially seem to hold up okay because they're small. And once you put the binding on, it really does a nice job to provide a lot more structure. There we go. That is one side. Get that little kink out there. And now we're going to do the other side. Same kind of thing. You're going to pull up that. Crank it up so you can see. You're going to pull up this panel. You're going to clip it like we did before. All the way down. And you're going to sew as close to that stitching along the base as you possibly can. But not, you don't have to go around. All right. Clip, clip, clip. More clips are your friend. See? Looking good. All right. I'm going to go back from this angle now since you've got that other angle. You can watch from here. And again, down and around and up the other side. About a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You want to make sure you catch enough. You don't want to leave a huge seam allowance because we still have to put binding on. So we're going to push this out of the way. And we're going to go. And again, as you get towards the bottom, you want to really flatten it out, square it out. It'll help get to that point better. And then we'll go up the other side. We're going to compress here and get as square as we can down there. And up the other side. We are almost done, folks. This is not a very time-consuming bag. Comes together pretty quickly, especially when all the pieces are cut out. It's a lot of rectangles, so we're gonna just check our corners, make sure we got close enough. Can't really tell, but I'll show you. There's no gaps in there. Everything looks good, even though we're not quite where we're supposed to be on all of those. They're not connected, but they're very, very, very close. It's enough. That plus the binding will close those corners, no problem. I have not had an issue with any of them so far. So I'm just gonna quickly give this thing a haircut, cut all your really long threads. Now, if your corner fabric is, or the corners here, if they're sticking out a lot, you can trim those back a little bit just so it doesn't make the binding all bulky in those areas. Cut all this stuff out of the way so it doesn't pop out later. Just makes everything easier. Now for binding is kind of a love it or hate it thing. I think some people hate it, some people love it. The first couple of times I did binding, I bought the pre-made stuff from Joann's. I was not a fan. My machine struggled with it. Again, I have a domestic, so you know, it requires the more layers I put under it, it's eventually gonna quit. And because of that, binding was double fold, kind of like when you do straps and you fold and then fold again. That was adding a lot of layers to sections of the bag that were already thick, because usually when you're putting binding on, you've got a lot of stuff coming together all in one spot. So I saw a few people mention using waterproof canvas. So that's what I now use. I pre-cut a bunch of strips. It's about, I do like 1 inch and 1/8. It just gives me a little bit of breathing room when I cut them. I have some pre-cut. I hope I have enough. I think I have enough. Let me see. Oh, I think this might be enough for both sides. If not, I'll cut some more off camera. All right. So the way I do the binding when I put it on, I mean, it's straightforward at first, but around the corners at the bottom, I'll show you my little trick. So I'm gonna clip, actually aim it towards me here so you can watch me do this. I'm gonna clip here, and I'm gonna fold, make sure I'm covering all my stitching. That's important when you're putting your binding on. That's why you have short seam allowance, right? You don't wanna have a 1/2 inch seam allowance here, because then you're going to be pushing it with your binding. You don't line it up quite right. You're going to see it. You don't want to see it. So I'm going to clip. When I get to the bottom here, what I do is I kind of, because it's a square, I kind of pinch here and hold it, and I pull around the corner there, and then fold it down and then clip. And I don't worry about whatever weird bulk is happening in that corner right here, because I'm actually going to snip that so it sits better. So we're going to go around the corner, do our clips. Same thing here. I'm going to tuck nice and tight and pull so this stays nice, and then I'll fold over this side, and whatever happens in that corner on the inside, not a big deal. See, it looks kind of sloppy right now, but I'm going to take scissors. I'm going to put a nice little snip in there, and then I'm going to fold one end under the other side. And when I do that and I stitch across it, it comes out a lot neater. If that makes you uncomfortable, don't do that. This is my particular process. I am not a professional. I am not a pattern maker. I'm going to give you my little, warning here. This is not going to work with something that is not if it's it's a fabric that doesn't fray, it's going to work. But if you use something else, you might have issue with it. So please, please, please keep that in mind when you do this, that this may not work for you if you use a different material. I'm using, like I said, waterproof canvas. I'm going to put that snip in and then I just tuck it in. And then when I sew these corners, it'll catch. Actually, I want to do it the other way. This way. Yeah. It'll catch. It'll hold it down, and it kind of keeps that from getting really thick, because if you were to just kind of like bowl over it and just sew, that's a lot of bulk there, because a lot of times it'll bunch underneath and create like a really funky knot. So snip, little snip, tuck, tuck, off we go. So there we go, the binding on one side. And I may have to cut some more of this binding off screen because I don't think I have enough to go on the other side. That's all right. We'll trim that later. We'll do one side for now. And we're going to do it kind of the same way. We got to push everything out of the way. The same way we sewed. Now, again, you want to get as close as you can to the bottom without going around the corner. If your machine can handle going around the corner, go around the corner. My machine cannot handle going around the corner. It gets really funky down there. And that's why I do this kind of sew as far as I can. Usually I have something to kind of, I'll use this, like a stylus to kind of keep things in place. Aim the camera back to where it needs to be. All right, so now as we get down to this corner here, we are going to get as close to that corner as we possibly can. This is like the Price is Right. As close as we can, as close as your machine lets you. And then you're going to reinforce your stitches. And then just get out of there, because otherwise it ends up coming out kind of messy. So now, when you come around this side, I'll move the camera again. I'm unplugged. I think my phone is charged enough. Come around here. This is, like I said, high quality production here happening. Just moving my phone around. When you come around this way, in order to get to this base, it's very tricky, because obviously this is tricky. So I kind of push the edges out and fold this down, and then really try to get into that corner to make it as straight as I can. As flat as I can. And then you're going to start as close as you can to those previous stitches. If they're not exact, it's okay. You want to get as close as you can. And then we're going to reinforce. So back and forth. And then across we go. Just keep it flat, flat, flat. All the way across. I'll try to move you over here a little bit more. Hopefully you can see. And as close as you can to the other corner. Your machine's going to tell you when it can't go anymore. Listen to it. All right. I'm going to snip, and then we're going to fold it down this way. Get in there. And off we go down the side. There we go. One side of our binding done. Then we'll go in there and we'll trim our threads so you can see. Trim those threads, trim the ones at the top. Come back around here so you can see. There we go. See, and those corners end up nice and tidy, especially when you use threads that match the binding, which I highly recommend. I'm going to trim this corner here just to make it even because I didn't do that before. Make it nice. And then we have to do the other side. Do the binding for this. And I don't think any of these pieces are long enough. I guess I could overlap, but I don't want to do that. That's unnecessary. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and then I'll be back. Okay. There we go. I am back. I've got some more binding. We're going to clip on the other side. Just like we did before. And I know there's other people who have made this bag who have done it in a way that doesn't require binding on the outside. I haven't actually watched or reviewed those patterns. Because I kind of worked on this on my own for a little while and wanted to see if I could do it based on what I've learned over the last few years as somebody who's made some bags and watched some videos and so on and so forth. And, you know, I like the idea of not having to do binding. I mean, binding is a pain sometimes. But it also adds a nice accent and a nice structure to the bag that I really like. So, you know, if you like the idea of binding, then use this. If you don't like the idea of binding, check out many of the other options that are out there. There are some incredible, amazing, talented, incredible, a second time, because they deserve it, bag designers out there who really, really, really know their stuff. And this is not for the faint of heart. Just coming up with this and even just doing a video for it has been... So kudos to all of you. If that's something you've done ever in your life, design a bag. Anyways, here we go. Same kind of thing. I've clipped it on. I've created my snips. I'm knocking things off my table. That seems par for the course today. Make these little corners nice and neat. One, there's two, and then after this, the only thing that's left is to roll the handle at the top, and we're done. So, woohoo! Anyway, let's get around these. Move my angle one more time this way. Hopefully you're on screen, on camera. Whatever sucks, I will edit out. This may not all make it. And if it does, then I'm just talking to myself. This is hard. Talking for like however long this video has been. I don't even know how long this video has been. I'll find out when I edit it. To just make it interesting. Because I could just sit here and sew. It could be ASMR. It could just be like... But just to kind of let you know what's happening. Tell you about myself a little bit. Kind of like... I'm not used to it. So, anyway. Off we go. Last little bit of binding. Down and around. Get to that corner as close as you can. Doesn't have to be exact. You just want to get as close as you can to hold that binding in place. Really push that down to get it nice and flat. Yeah, my machine's like, yeah, that's as far as you're going this time. Okay. I hear you, Betty. That's as far as we're gonna go. I've named my machine Betty. Her name, actually, this is Betty Jr. My first machine was Betty. My first machine was another brother that I got for free off of Facebook during the pandemic when I first learned to sew, and I didn't have a sewing machine. And I was in a group that was a humongous group here in Central Connecticut of women who were making masks. And this one person was like, I can't, the tension is being a pain in the butt. I'm just going to buy a new machine. Who wants this machine? And I said, yes, please. Because at the time, I was just making masks. I didn't need anything crazy. I figured if I made totes or whatever, it would be fine. That was a bridge I was going to cross when I got there. Like, first things first, pandemic masks. And so I thought I should name her. Like I name all my things. So her name was Betty. I didn't go far enough. Let me do this one more time. And so I also named my cars. I've had 3 cars. The first one was Nellie Nissan. The second was Nellie Jr. And my third is Nellie the Third because they're all the same name. I don't know why I've determined this, but I have. Don't ask questions. It just is what it is. I am who I am. I'm unapologetically that. All right. So this is Betty. That's a long story for me telling you the name of the machine is Betty Jr., but what else have you got to do but listen to me yammer while I sew this, right? That's why you're here. And it's better I tell you weird-ass stories than sit in silence. Maybe you prefer the silence, at which point there's a mute button. And off we go. Last side. Get to the end here. Forward and back. Binding is done. Oops. As I launch my clips, let's work out the little kinks, cut the threads. Give this little thing a haircut. Well, at least the egregious ones are out of the way. I'll give this a better trim later off camera. You don't need to see all that, but let me get these big ones here. Oops. Snip. Snip. And trim this little piece of binding. Now, I don't do anything fancy across the top of these. If you wanted to, you could, I guess, take another piece and kind of rivet over the top. That's an option. I don't. I'm making a bunch of these. I'm trying to keep them as low cost as possible, as easy as possible. So it's fine. So there we are. I'm just gonna roll the handles. I'll show you how to do that momentarily. And she's done. So the way the handles are done on this designer tote is they pucker them outwards, if you can see here. So about maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches up, your choice. You're gonna just put a clip there just to hold it. That one's gonna crack. And then we're gonna fold it in half and go all the way around to the other side. Same thing, about 1.5 inches up. Try and be consistent, whatever you decide. These are really thick straps. I need a big clip. And then I'm just gonna sew. I'm gonna sew from clip to clip and probably remove the clip to get it under the machine. Let's get you checking this out. My poor tripod. This is gonna be, I hope you all took your Dramamine here because this is one heck of a ride you guys are getting. Again, I'm not a professional. This is me just trying to like share with all you guys what I've come up with here. So forgive me for my lack of editing and professionalism. You're gonna get what I feel like giving you, I guess. You don't like it? Don't watch it. Doing the best I can. I'm gonna be lucky if this has any sort of transitions in the video, so you know. Graphics, probably not. We'll see. We'll see how creative I'm feeling and what I find in iMovie. All right, so we're sewing these handles. We just roll them in half and sew them. Just 1.5 inch webbing is too wide to just hold. Plus it adds a nice little finish. It just feels finished when you do this. Again, is it a necessity? No. Do you have to do it? No. Can you use 1 inch webbing and not do it? Probably. I'm just telling you the way I do it. But we're all free people and can do what we like, so. You could do whatever you like. That is the beginning and ending of my singing career. It's gonna go to about there without pinching my fingers. Snips. There we go. So there's one rolled handle. Now we're going to do the other. Same thing. Pinch towards the outside. Could you pinch toward the inside? Yep, it's your bag. Do you, do you. This is the way it is on that shall not be named designer bag. But if you want to do it the other way, you can. No one's stopping you. The bag police will not come yell at you for it. So, I'm not going to sing it again. You can do whatever you like. There we go. Make sure you go forward and back. And off we go. Just hoping my angle on my camera is good and you're not just staring at a corner of the wall somewhere. You might be, sorry. There you go. So profesh. almost done. I know my stickers are waiting in my mailbox and I'm excited. And of course they came after I started filming, so I saw the UPS truck go by and I've been like wanting to get this done so I can go. I know I can just stop the video, but if I go down to get my stickers, I'm not gonna have the motivation to come back up here. So the stickers are my motivation to get this done, which I have now completed, barring any issues, which there should be none. And just trimming up the threads and showing you the final finished product. So let's trim these threads all nice. Threads. Oop. Come on. It's late, I'm tired. It's not that late, it's still daylight out, but the sun goes down and my body is like, it's time for pajamas, it's time for dinner. So, snip, snip. Here we go. Come back to me here. I feel like my hair's all over the place. Doesn't matter. You don't care. No one's judging. Here she is, all done. I'm gonna back up so you can see. Just a cute little tote. Just kind of massage out some of these seams. But that's it. We've got front and back. We've got a nice bind. I see a thread that I have to trim, but we've got nice tight corners on the binding because we put the little snips in. Again, your mileage may vary. If you're using fabric that you shouldn't snip, don't snip it. We've got our 2 pockets on the inside. Waterproof canvas, 2 pockets, all set. And purse feet because that's always fun. So anyways, thank you for joining me. This has been a process. Please share this. It's free. This is me giving back to all the people who have just helped me learn how to do all these incredible things. So I'm not looking to make any money off this. I love doing it. I'm not going to be doing a ton of these because I'm not a bag designer, but I did want to share this one with you because it's stinking cute and I am proud of myself. I'm going to pat myself on the back because I never thought that I'd be able to do something like this. So there you go. Not the tote bag. If you can find me on social media, my name's Athena Loveland. You'll see me in all the bag making groups. A Love Bag Co. on Instagram. Please share the ones that you make. I'd love to see them if you make them. Because that's what this community is about. So if you have any questions, you can message me, leave a comment below, and have a good night. Happy sewing.